Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate the restoration of 19MO, but you might notice that at this point I don't have a preparation on 19MO, so I might want to do something about that. So I have a 330 burr. I actually have a new one this time. So I'm going to move along pretty quickly to get this preparation done. Get a little more width on the occlusal for carving the amalgam. Everything else is pretty much done the way we want.
I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Okay, so we have a prep. So you got clearances, exit angles, all that kind of stuff, and enough bulk. Okay, so I have this matrix band already installed in here. So a small knob turns the screw against the matrix band and locks it into that slot. The big knob pulls the block away from that front section. The concave part in the front section goes toward the gingiva, and I can position it over the tooth, push it down, and I want to make sure it's down far enough so it covers the gingival margin. Something going on down there at the gingival margin. Notice that? So what's going on down there? Interesting. So let's take it out and see what that is. Probably a little bit of the gingiva stuck up inside there. So let's see if I can slide it down a little closer to the actual tooth itself this time. Okay, now I think I'm going to wedge it and it'll be okay. Okay, so we got a nice, good adaptation at the gingival margin. Tighten it here. We're going to take the ball burnisher and burnish the matrix band against the contact with the adjacent tooth. So it thins out the metal a little bit, starts to shape the position and the shape of the contact. Okay, so now I'm ready to go ahead and start to condense the amalgam. So I have the Hollenbeck carver and I have the condenser and I have the carrier. With the carriers, this one got sort of tight up in this area here, so only one end of it really works. But I have this one over here that is working a little bit better on both ends, so make sure it comes in and out of both ends. We have an amalgam well, which doesn't seem to be in my tray, but I have some amalgam which I'm going to shake up and I'm going to bring back in a minute and put it in a well. Now that white plastic thing I'm missing, so I'm going to use a screwdriver and break that out. Put the amalgam in there. Then I'll pick up the amalgam on this side. Pick up the amalgam on this side. So down in the box, I can do some on the occlusal. Condense very well in the bottom corners of the box. Into all the occlusal areas that we can. I'm going to bring some more over. So we can do some initial condensation with just the carrier, actually. So I can push it down like this and then use that end to push it against the, push it downward. So I'm starting to condense toward the margins. Notice how shiny it's getting, so it's, the mercury is rising to the surface. And I can rub off the excess at these margins. And then I'm going to bring some more over. Okay, so I'll do our final condensation. So I'm pushing against this margin, I'm pushing against this margin. Then I turn it, I'm pushing against this one lingually, I'm pushing against the triangular ridge here. Pushing against the lingual side of the marginal ridge here. So I can push vertically on the top of the marginal ridge. But I can also push laterally against these margins, against the facial lingual wall margins. I'm rubbing off the excess as I was showing in that picture earlier. I can use the small end and condense a little more precisely against these margins. And again, against this triangular ridge, against this triangular ridge, I'm starting to shape the anatomy. I can even start to get a, a pit here near the near this marginal ridge. And I'm condensing vertically and then condensing laterally. And rub the excess off. Starting to get an idea as to where the pit should be, near the marginal ridge. Okay, so now I can start to do some initial carving. I want to pay attention to the top of the marginal ridge as we indicated before. I'll come back and do that more later. I want to have a pit about right here and about right here. Coming in the facial lingual grooves, coming down into that pit. It's hard to do the inside of the marginal ridge with the matrix band still on, especially when the matrix band is so tall. Now there's a pit about here in the central fossa, another pit over here in the central fossa. So I can come down this groove here and carve into that pit directly. There's a pit over here where the distal buccal groove and the distal groove come together. So if I have a pit here and a pit here and a pit here and a pit here, I can carve between them. I'm going to point the instrument parallel to the triangular ridge and go from this pit over here and then into this pit and then down to this pit. So look at the anatomy of the amalgam right there. See how smooth it is? See how it matches the tooth perfectly? Even though the matrix band is so tall, I can still get a pretty good anatomy. It'll be much better when the matrix band is out. So from this pit to this pit to this pit and then out here. So it's looking very natural right now. Okay, I can do a little bit of an occlusal embrasure. I'm going to bring the amalgam or the matrix band out at an angle, not vertically upward, but 45 degrees out. Now I can come back and do the top of the marginal ridge from the facial and lingual down to the marginal ridge there. I can carve the outside of the marginal ridge, the occlusal embrasure. So this is a strategy that I was outlining on the lecture. Top of the marginal ridge, then the outside of the marginal ridge, then the pit here with the groove coming down parallel to the marginal ridge. Pit here with the groove coming down parallel with the marginal ridge, then carve from the top of the marginal ridge over into that pit. And here from the top of the marginal ridge over into that pit. Now I've already pretty much done the occlusal anatomy. Again, point the instrument parallel to the triangular edge in each of these cases when you go between the pits. Pit to pit to pit. Parallel to the triangular ridge from this pit to the central groove, and then over into this pit, and then out the facial groove. Okay. Now we're going to check and see how we are as far as overhangs. We blow a little air on there. So check overhangs and embrasures. Looks like we're pretty clean. And then last thing we're going to do is, so when we carve, there's going to be a little step, a little ledge right in the top of that contact. So we're going to take a piece of floss. I would rather use unwaxed floss, but we're going to floss through the contact and then slide it out this way. Don't bring it back up through the contact, obviously. And there's the restoration. Okay, if we want to work on any additional form to the embrasure, we can do that anytime we want. Again, this instrument gives us everything that we want to do. So I almost always use the half Holland back for just about everything. Okay.